Welcome back to the Teachers Lounge. I'm your host, Lloyd Hopkins, Executive Director of $1 Million Teacher Project. We're going to hop right back into our interview with Emily Graham. This is chapter 2. So you do have to, at a certain level, know yourself, right, to even be authentic. You don't want to emulate somebody else's teaching style.
No, don't ever do that.
And true to yourself. I remember when I used to work park and recreation years ago. And I was more of the, I viewed myself as the big brother. So I was kind of like the no games, and, I joke around a little bit, but I was the, let's make sure you're following the rules. I was kind of that caring teacher, right? That you come across in a school where they're hard on you, but they care,
Yeah.
But I've never really, heard it expressed that way inside the classroom. Be authentic, know your authentic voice. Because I think kids see that, they know. And I think a lot of times people underestimate how alert kids are, how much they're paying attention. Like they know when you're putting on a show and when you're being who you are. So
they know. I mean, we say that about their emotional intuition, which is totally true. But especially I feel that when you work with middle schoolers, they pay attention to everything, like what color your earrings are, whether or not you got your nails did. Miss Graham, it's been a while since you got your eyebrows done, huh? Like, yes.
Who was you dating? Who was that guy or girl that came to your class? Like,
yeah, exactly. I know. Or like, who do you look so cute for today? They really do. And I think it's because they're watching you. They're taking cues from you.
Yeah.
Whether it's about like how you conduct yourself or the things you like, they really are looking to not just teachers, but a lot of adults in their lives on how to act and how to be.
And, and that's why I think it's so important. So a part of our work is that we want, we're working on changing the culture. We want to change the culture around how the teaching profession is viewed, not only in Arizona, but in the United States, how the community views it and how the profession views itself. Because what I feel, especially the fact that, like you just said, kids are paying attention. Teachers should be a student's first example of success. Teachers should be a student's first example of somebody that's getting up every day doing what they love, and then you can teach them how to do the same thing. Like you play such an important role. They're going to remember you forever, so we have to support you in getting there and changing that culture because they are paying attention.
Yeah, I agree. And, a student getting there is so much more than just getting an education, especially now today where a lot of households have 2 working parents. There's a lot more pressure on schools to do things like character education and health education because the American Family Unit looks completely different from how it did even 20 years ago. And I think schools these days are sometimes better. Some schools do better than others, but they're really doing a lot of the work that families would usually do in rearing their children.
Yeah. So what do you think is the most difficult hardship you've had to face thus far as a teacher?
I think it's the amount of work. And, most people who join the profession don't do it because they think it's easy. People know teaching is really hard. But I mean, I can't tell you how many times I would just like Sunday morning cry from exhaustion because the way that our school system is built makes no sense in a 21st century world. It doesn't. You're at the school at best, like even if you're super experienced, you have years and years and years of lesson planning and material prep, the earliest or the latest that you could possibly get to the school, like assuming your school starts at 8, is probably like 7:30 because you have duty. Maybe you got to make copies. You got to open up the classroom, unlock it for kids to come in and be ready. So even if you're managing your schedule really tightly, the reality is that your quote unquote paid workday is spent in front of kids. And at least the schools that I've worked at don't have a lot of time for prep. And if they do, it's like 30 minutes. But that's when they schedule meetings. So, you can't lesson plan and cut out papers and teach at the same time. So that leaves your prep and your materials time to outside of work hours. And I feel really bad for my friends during the school year because they're like, hey, do you want to come out on Tuesday? And I'm like, oh, hell no, I got a great paper. It's like, you're funny. That's just the reality of my life, though. And you know, I'm a busybody, so I really love like constantly having something to do. But there are some points where it gets dangerously exhausting, and you know, I've had to ask myself really hard questions like, is the amount of money I make worth what I put into it? Because you know, with the amount of time that I invest in teaching, I could easily be making like 25% or 30% more money doing a super easy 9 to 5 job. I could do it, but for 3 years, I've decided not to make that decision because one, this work is so valuable to me, so fulfilling, and two, because I feel a really strong calling to serve my kids. I think of myself as a servant to the community, and you know, if I left that position, I think I'd be abandoning my reason for working and I'd be abandoning my kids.
Mm, mm, mm. We have to make sure that our teachers can have a personal life, you know,
Yeah.
because you're still a human being, and that is a part of self-care, like kind of some of the stuff we talked about earlier. Like, and that's why I think these conversations are so important. Because again, even though there are those challenges, you still get up every day and you're going to that classroom and you're looking to inspire these kids, and you put all that to the side as selflessly as you can. And I feel like as a community, we take that for granted. You know, we exploit that. We exploit the fact that you're willing to sacrifice your own personal things for the betterment of the community, for the betterment of students, for the betterment of your school, which is admirable. But we shouldn't allow the teaching profession to be this soul crushing thing that you have to choose happiness for yourself or happiness of others, you know.
Yeah.
So there has to be better balance created, which I think is important, and that's how we really preserve the profession, and that's how we strengthen it, that's how we expand it, that's how we make it more attractive for people to want to come in. I think teachers should be pampered. You should walk in every day to massages and
I wish so.
people walking around with fans fanning you, you know, drinking lemonade, and that's my vision. That's how
I'd like to live in that world. I would love to live in that world.
But I do feel like one important thing about what's going on with the pandemic and just the year 2020, so much upheaval and so much change that's going on, is this is a time for us to re-examine systems, for us to reimagine how the instruction is delivered, and reimagine the role of the teacher, reimagine how the classroom looks. This is time for us to do those things, because I don't think the current system I think the current system can be improved. I think there's room for growth, there's room for improvement, there's room to create a system that serves more students in a more efficient fashion. If there was one innovation, you had a magic wand and could change how classrooms looked all across the state, what would that look like?
I would change the model that we have for all intents and purposes, our classrooms are pretty oriented towards sending kids to college. I think in very few schools is there a focus on developing an individual path for a student. And that has a lot to do with how schools as an institution began. You know, they were mostly for wealthy communities who could afford to send their kids to a daily regular education. And I think it does a really big disservice, especially to our communities of poverty. You know, like me, for example, I started working from the time I was 13 and a half to help support the household. You know, I was helping pay bills. Had it not been by the sole thing of luck that I was able to get, or that I lived in a state that had a full ride scholarship for high achieving low income students, probably would have gone straight into the workforce instead of going straight into college, because I wouldn't have been able to help support my family, support myself, and pay for college. So if I could wave a magic wand and change everything, I would implement technology and data science to help kids grow an individual path for themselves that doesn't necessarily land them in college. Because the reality is not everyone needs to go to college. College is a great equalizer. Education makes it really improves people's quality of life. There's research that shows that, of course, people who get college degrees earn more over their lifetime, but it's not the right path for all of our children. And a lot of kids figure out really quickly that school might not be the right thing for them. And we really need to change that. We need to let kids know that school is for them, whether or not they want to go to college, whether they want to go directly into the workforce, whether they want to go into the armed forces, whether they want to do vocational training. There is a path for them, and school is going to help put them on that path, because right now it doesn't do that.
Yeah, and I agree. There has to be, what I like to say is that we need to create empathetic classrooms. We need to create classrooms that better understand the individual, where we're not teaching in this one size fits all manner, and where we're able to really tap into the unique talents of every student in that classroom. Now, that also means that teachers need more support in the classroom to be able to do that, because this model that we have right now of one teacher in front of 30, 40, I saw a classroom that had 50 kids in it, and expect that teacher to be able to effectively address all those unique needs in their classroom. It's unrealistic. So we need empathetic classrooms that better understand the students. We need more opportunities for diversified and differentiated instruction in the classroom, especially if we can't shrink the classroom size. Because there was a time when the teacher only had 10 to 15 kids in the class. It's a little bit easier to have a personalized touch in a classroom that small. But you start getting 40, 50 kids, what often happens is that the teacher is either teaching to the top of the class, to the middle of the class, or to the bottom of the class.
Right.
You know? And often the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So whoever in that audience, whether it's the smart kids, the kids that are causing disruption, or those kind of kids in the middle that are the most vocal or the loudest, is kind of where your attention goes. And so what happens is that you get a lot of kids that slip through the cracks. You know, I was one of those slip through the cracks kids. I never had that lean on me out the movie moment where the teacher was like, Lloyd, what are you doing? And
yeah,
and you know, I wasn't good enough to get a lot of attention, and I wasn't bad enough to get a lot of attention. Like, I was right there in the middle, you know. And that's dangerous as well. You know, every kid needs that, you know, and we want to create it. What does the average parent not know about what's going on in the halls?
Oh man, I think the average parent doesn't know a lot about their kids' social media presence or how it impacts their lives. You know, I think I'm very unique in the fact that I'm 22 years old and I'm in my third year of teaching. So for all intents and purposes, I'm very young in the teaching world. In both of the schools I've taught at, I've always been the youngest person on staff. And I actually relate a lot more to the kids than I do my adult peers, because, you know, I grew up with Facebook. I remember Snapchat and Instagram coming out. I had those as soon as they became popular platforms. And I think what I'm saying goes both ways, because I think a lot of families feel that social media is just this thing that like kids do, and it's like, oh, they're so addicted to their phones. But these platforms are changing how we work, how we live, how we communicate. And, you know, my life wouldn't end if I had no social media, but it would definitely change. You know, I don't just use social media to communicate. I use it to get new ideas. I use it to be inspired. I use it to exercise. So I feel like I wish families knew more about how their kids relate to their digital selves and how they relate to other people online too, because it's not what I think a lot of families think it is, which is like this vacuum click hole of like random crap that we distract ourselves with. It's a lot more than that. You know, you kind of develop a second sense of self through the technology that you use every day. And then on the flip side of that, of course, is like a lot of parents don't know that their kids already have Instagram and that they're harassing each other or bullying each other. Like, I can't tell you, and truth be told, I do not think that social media platforms should let people who are like under the age of 13, 14 be on social media, because these kids are exposed to like people that they don't know. They are exposed to social situations that have no responsibility, so they can say anything that they want with no repercussions. And I think social media for sure is neurologically impacting our kids, like getting those dopamine hits every 15 seconds. I got a notification, I got a message, someone liked my post. It's making it really hard for them to participate in our normal world. I'm really scared to see what kinds of changes we're going to see in kids now, like kids who are 2, 3, 4 right now, who are in those critical stages of development and very frequently get stuck in front of an iPad. You know, it makes it hard to create an engaging learning environment when kids are so used to flashing colors, music, lights, like influencers, people in front of them all the time. And then I ask them to return to the classroom and read like The Lord of the Flies. You know, you're not getting dopamine hits from reading Lord of the Flies every 15 seconds. It's hard.
Wow. That's profound. And maybe what needs to happen in the classroom, like a kid gets a like for reading 10 pages or
yeah.
And
classrooms are so like 1987. Like it really makes me mad how like far behind classrooms are. Like if I had it my way, every single wall in my classroom would be a projector. Everyone would have like a profile that I could add like points to and give praise and feedback and get metrics on. Like, hey, I see that Sarah logged that she didn't sleep well last night. Maybe that's why she's kind of crabby in class today. Like, we need to make our classrooms as technologically advanced as the rest of the world is. Like, there's more technology in my Fry's grocery store than there is in my classroom, and I'm not happy about it.
And along that line, our classrooms haven't been innovated in 100 years. So we've been operating off the same approach that was really geared towards industrialized society and preparing kids for factory work and sitting in lines and all that kind of stuff. And it's been the same. It's been static for 100 years. There is no other system that we've allowed to stay the same for 100 years. Like, period. Any other system would have been innovated long time ago. But we're kind of in this comfort zone of this. And maybe we're getting lazy. Maybe because we're like, okay, well, you know, it works for some. Why change it? You know, but it needs to be innovated and it needs to be caught up to the times to serve the new world and how kids are processing information now. And maybe there needs to be more of a social media aspect to how kids engage in education. So more of them want to participate, you know, because that's also part of the problem is that it's outdated and it's not entertaining or interesting or engaging for a lot of students, you know, and where you're more so being taught how to fit into the box.
And the kids will gravitate towards whatever your authenticity is.